What is up, everybody? Escape211 here, and we are doing a comparison video. This one we're going to compare a couple of builds. This time we're doing a support build. Last time it was long range damage, but we got the dual Stasis Beam 12 common support build there, and then the Stasis Beam 16 with the Thermal Lance 6. And I don't know if these actually have specific names. I know the Stasis Beam 12 dual one is often called Mr. Freeze, which is pretty cool. I like the name for that one. And then I have a guy in my clan that calls this one Dry Ice, which I also like too. I think those are pretty cool names. I plan to adopt them, but you know, if you guys have certain names, feel free to use them. But yeah, we're gonna compare each of these builds to see which ends up being best, and we're gonna cover the usual type of things that we do for this. This will be availability, and then the damage, and the overall usage, and how these builds compare. So with that kind of stuff said, let's get into it. Here we go. All right, our first category is availability. How much does it cost to get and maintain these weapons, namely for end game status? We're going to start out with the Dry Eyes build, which is the Stasis Beam 16 and Thermal Lance 6, and we'll get the Thermal Lance 6 first because this is the first one that is available to us on the progress path. This one is dirt cheap to get. It is only 2,500 credits, which is awesome, but it is only at 1 star to start. So we need to do quite a bit of upgrading. The baseline for this will be 5-star level 1, and then we also want to see it at 6-star level 1. But at 5-star level 1, it is 3,158 coins and then 482,075 credits. That's a decent chunk. But like we said, that is just the first stop and only half of this build. So we want to also look at it at 6-star level 1 to compare it evenly cost-wise with the dual Stasis Beam 12. And if we do that, the Thermal Lance 6 comes out at 5,025 A coins and then 932,075 credits. So that is already a pretty good chunk. But this is only half of this weapon set, right? We also have to get the Stasis Beam 16, the bigger weapon on this loadout. So let's move over to that. Now this is much further down the progress path, so it's going to take a little while XP to get there, but it is right here. So the Stasis Beam 16 is a 4-star, which is nice, so that means we have to do less upgrading, but to purchase it, it will be a bit more. It is 310,000 credits, all right? Decent chunk of credits, but we only have to do 1-star upgrade to get it to 5-star, and to get there for the 5-star level 1 will be 2,500 A coins and then 575,000 credits. So not as bad as the Thermal Lance for this first step. But to be fair, we also want to look at the Stasis Beam 16 when it is 6-star level 1, because remember, the dual Stasis Beam 12, the Mr. Freeze build, forces us into 6-star level 1. So if we do that, the Stasis Beam 16 at 6-star level 1 is 5,000 A coins and then 1,025,000 credits. So it's a decent amount to get it up to 6-star, but really anything is. So this isn't really unheard of or far off of what the usual costs are. But now we want to combine both of these weapons and see what the overall cost structure is. And I think it's fair for us to both look at it at 5-star level 1 and then at 6-star level 1, just so you see what it is budget option wise versus the end game. So at 5-star level 1, this build, the Dry Ice build, is 5,650 A coins and then 1,057,000 and then 75 credits. So that's a pretty solid chunk of change, but it's not awful. I mean, at least in comparison to some other builds. But of course, like we said, we want to see what it is at 6-star level 1 to get the exact comparison of cost with the Stasis Beam 12 build, the Mr. Freeze build. And at 6-star level 1, it is 10,025 A coins and then 1,957,075 credits. That's pretty high. So we want to see how that compares with the Stasis Beam 12. So let's move over to that one and check it out. All right, so if we go back to our progress path and then slide it on down, we're going to see where the Stasis Beam 12 falls. It's pretty far up the progress path as another exotic, but it is not as far as, oh, there it is. It is not as far as the Stasis Beam 16. Now to unlock, or to purchase, I should say, the Stasis Beam 12, it is the premium currency. It is 2,825 A coin. So this is the most expensive to purchase out of these three weapons. But you will see the difference more so in its long-term path, right? So when we get this to the 6-star variant, because you're only focusing on one weapon, we're going to see a cost difference. This is very similar to when we looked at the Thanos versus the dual long arm 10. So let's take a peek at what that cost will be. To get the dual Stasis Beam 12 to 6-star level 1, it is 6,575 A coins and then 715,000 credits. Now that is a decent amount less, even so than the 5-star level 1 version of the dry ice build. These are pretty close in comparison of cost. Yeah, you have a little bit more A coins in one, but a lot more credits in the other. And I think cost-wise, if you compare both, the 6-star level 1 of the Stasis Beam 12 is less expensive than the 5-star level 1 variant of the dry ice build. And that is a big deal because we're not even at the 6-star. And that means the 6-star version of the dry ice build, because you're focusing on 2 weapons, is significantly more. So for availability, we have to go with the dual Stasis Beam 12. Next up, we have the category of damage, and that is what we're going to focus on here, which does more damage. And the tricky part, I would say, with these weapons is that they are beam weapons, so the damage is continuous. So the per shot damage is a harder thing to deal with or calculate or compare properly, just based on the fire rates being different and then how the clips end up. So we're going to focus more on the damage per magazine here, just to generally go over that and see where damage falls. And when we look at the Thermal Lance, it is 7,500 for the full clip, and that's at 5-star level 1. And then if we look at the Stasis Beam 16, its buddy, that's gonna be 26,800. All right, so overall, that is more so the damage flat, and then the total damage together, we actually amp up because we have overheat. So the total package there would be 51,450 per clip. Now that's a rough estimate of the math, just because overheat will vary depending on when it starts or ends for you, but it should be fairly quick at 5-star level 1. But let's look at the Stasis Beam 12 to see that. This one is 23,300 for its clip damage, which is pretty solid. But we're going to double that, of course, right? Because it's a Stasis Beam 12 dual build. And when we do that, it is 46,600 per clip. But this is still doing a bit less damage than the 5-star variant of the dry ice build. Now, of course, the dry ice build is going to be doing its variance of damage based on when each of these hit their procs, how long it takes for overheat to happen, and then how long these actually sustain damage. But that would be true of either weapon in terms of its sustaining damage, and overheat happens pretty fast at 5-star level 1, less than a second, or right about a second. So even though there might be slightly less damage, it's still going to be a bit more than the dual Stasis Beam 12, even at 6-star level 1. And I've only compared the damage with the dry ice build when it is at 5-star level 1. So I'm not even going to put the damage numbers up for when it's 6-star level 1, because I think that the dry ice build, the Stasis Beam 16, and the Thermal Lance 6 is going to be the winner here in the damage category. All right, let's shift over and look at the last category, usage, and this is how these builds feel on the field. And quite honestly, these are very similar. They're all beam weapons. They all easily lock on and sustain damage to their targets. The sustained damage that happens is slightly different between these. The Thermal Lance 6 obviously has less damage and expounds its clip much quicker than the different Stasis Beam weapons. Those actually take about 19 seconds to unleash their full clip, which takes a while. But overall, the difference here is the damage and then the different stasis effects that you put down on your target. The dual Stasis Beam 12, the Mr. Freeze one, is obviously only going to focus on the freezing, but it does it in about 2 seconds, which is pretty fast. So that is a nice benefit. And this instantly does the full amount of damage it will do for its whole shot. You don't have to wait for overheat. So that's beneficial overall, but we do have to compare that with the same thing for the dry ice build. So let's shift over to that and take a peek at that. We already know that the dry ice build here is the one that's going to be doing better damage. Even at 5-star level 1, it's pretty comparable. But for a stasis effect, that's where the difference lies mainly, right? So the Stasis Beam 16, a single one, is going to freeze about a second slower. I mean, it's not quite a full second, but it's about a second slower. But you also get the benefit of overheat now from the Thermal Lance 6, which happens in a little less than a second. So it honestly feels like a trade-off. You're freezing someone slightly slower to be getting boosted damage for you and your teammates. And I honestly think this is a really good trade-off, one that is hard for me to deny, and one that really makes me play in the favor of this build over the Mr. Freeze build. So for me, I have to say that in the usage category, this takes the cake. And then overall, this build, the dry ice build, wins for me as well. that is going to be it for me, you guys. Quite honestly, I will say I like both of these builds a lot. They're both great support builds if you play the support role. But honestly, I mean, even though I favored for the dry ice build, I think the Mr. Freeze one is great, especially if you want something budget friendly that still does something great for supporting your team. So, you know, maybe the added benefit of overheat isn't worth the cost to you. Totally understandable. But, you know, overall, that is the thoughts for these two builds. You guys can let me know if you agree, disagree, different ways in which you use these builds, or thoughts you had as well below. But otherwise, we'll see you out there on the battlefield.